Hey everyone, it's Meka, and welcome to my very first episode of Crime Snacks. This is where I take some of the wildest, creepiest, and most unbelievable true crime stories and serve them up in bite-sized, easy-to-digest episodes. Think of it like your favorite late-night snack, but with like a chilling twist. So today, we're diving into the chilling story of Ed Gein. Now, I'll admit that I didn't really know much about Ed Gein. Jay is the one that kind of told me more about him. But once I found out about him, I was really intrigued by his story. This quiet farmer whose crimes in the 1950s shocked Americans and inspired movies like Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Silence of the Lambs, and I'm sure many more, and forever changed the way we look at true crime. And with Netflix preparing for release of Monster, the Ed Gein story, I thought it would only make sense to feature Ed Gein as my very first episode of my new series, Crime Snacks. This just isn't another murder case. It's the story of a man whose life, quite literally, blurred the lines between reality and things you would only see in nightmares. So, let's go ahead and get started talking about Ed Gein. Y'all are in for a real ride. Ed Gein was born in 1906 in Plainfield, Wisconsin. He grew up on a farm under the iron grip of his mother, Augusta. Listen, the name Augusta already sounds wild and mean to me. She was a very religious woman. She drilled that into her sons and basically taught them that everything outside of their home was evil, women were evil, anything that was not on that farm was evil, and to stay away from it. She was their guide to basically righteousness. By mid-1940s, his father, brother, and his mother had all passed away, which y'all probably can figure out made him kind of like spiral out of control. He was extremely close to his mother, and when she passed, he did not deal with it well at all. He started to isolate himself, and he started to develop this obsession with death and women that reminded him of his mother. Hence why they say this is a lot like Psycho, okay? On November 16th, 1957, Bernice Warden vanished. She worked at a hardware store, and immediately people in the town, because this is a small town, people in the town immediately started to suspect Ed Gein because some of the townspeople had saw Ed Gein at her store. So the local police went out to the farmhouse, and when they got there, they saw a scene of absolute horror, okay? The first place that they ended up when they got to the farmhouse was the shed at the farm. And when they walked into the shed, it was pitch dark, so they really couldn't see, but they did see something hanging from the rafters. And at first, they thought it was like an animal. But as they got closer, they realized that this was a human body hanging from the rafters in the shed. And it was split from the torso all the way up to basically the neck. Ed, being a farm boy, growing up on a farm, was very familiar with how to cut up animals and things like that. So he handled these bodies in such a way. Right after they left the farm, they decided to take a further look into his actual house. They went into the house, things only got worse. They walked in, they saw bowls with human skulls, lampshades with human skin, masks stitched from women's faces, even whole flesh suits he had made. You know, he robbed graves, digging up women's bodies that he thought reminded him of his mother. And he would take the remains and make masks and torso or whole suits out of their bodies. Though officially convicted of just 2 murders, Bernice Wooden, a tavern owner, and Mary Hogan, the evidence pointed to something way bigger. So also in this house, they ended up finding face masks that he had made of this woman that went missing a few years prior. Her name was Mary Hogan. She disappeared from a tavern and nobody ever knew like what happened to her. Well, they found her face that he was using as a mask inside of a paper bag and her skull in a box. Obviously, immediately he was arrested and questioned about what he was doing. And he was adamant about the fact that he only killed those 2 women and the rest of those body parts and skin, suits, and whatnot that were in the house were that of bodies that he dug up from the graveyard. A lot of people speculate that he wasn't necessarily telling the truth about that. So eventually he ended up meeting with a psychiatrist, and he revealed to the psychiatrist that his ultimate goal was to build a woman's suit, a suit made of various women's body parts that he could wear. And there's a story that he used to actually walk around in this body suit, women's suit that he had made of women's flesh and dance around in his house outside on his lands. That is something that a lot of people say that he did. This would make him feel like he stepped into his mother's skin. I know that sounds wild, but yeah, he basically could not let go of his mom. So any way that he could find a way to still feel attached to her, that is what he was willing to do. Gein's mind was shaped by his mother's dominance, crippling loneliness, and his obsession with death. Instead of turning to living, he turned to the dead. That's just what he was comfortable with. He was more comfortable with dead bodies than he was with human beings. I've read some things that he actually liked to be around children. And in the town, he was known to be really friendly, a little odd, but friendly. Kids liked him. He would invite people over. And another story that has been told is that, the bowls that he had in his house were made of human skulls, and he would serve people in these bowls, and they had no idea that they were eating out of bowls made of human skulls. Basically, Ed Gein's is a story of nightmares and horrors. I mean, even hardened investigators have said that the case was just too hard to process. It's just unreal and unbelievable, hence why a lot of movies used the Ed Gein story as their inspiration. So in 1958, Ed Gein was declared legally insane and sent to a mental institution instead of prison. They say that while he was in this mental institution, he was well behaved. He never caused any trouble. He never bothered anybody. He was extremely polite, helpful, friendly. A lot like what people would say in the town before he went into jail and eventually into this institution. They all said that he was friendly. He was just odd. But he lived there till his death in 1984. He died at the age of 77. His legacy, it lives on in Hollywood. Gein began the blueprint for horror icons Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. Each character carried pieces of Ed's story: overbearing mother, the mask of human skin, and his obsession with this transformation. Honestly, for me, this story, it just is a reminder that the truth of things can be far scarier than fiction. A man, his neighbors called him shy, polite, even helpful, was hiding some of the most gruesome secrets in American history. And here's the kicker. Ed Gein he's not considered a serial killer by definition. He doesn't really qualify for that. He only confessed to 2 murders, and those are the only 2 murders that were ever tied to him. The rest of the remains came from grave robbing, but despite this technicality, he'll forever go down as one of the most notorious names in true crime. So that was the Ed Gein story. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown chilling, and bear with me, this is my first one, and of course I'm gonna get better. But if you found it chilling, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on my next episode, and we'll continue to dive deeper into more true crime stories. And yeah, thanks for watching. See y'all next time.